Uh, this session is going to be based around understanding alert fatigue. I know we're on the Friday afternoon of SQL bits, so I imagine someone saw fatigue. I'm just like, this is perfect. I'll come in, I'll sit down, I'll relax for a while. And it's going to be a relaxing session. So my name is Owen Murphy. I work with one of the event sponsors, SolarWinds. No need to run for the exits. It's not going to be a sales pitch. Instead, we're going to be talking about kind of alerting best practices, and it'll be true for pretty much almost any monitoring solution that you might be using. So I work in product management, product marketing management, but most of my SolarWinds career has been spent working as a sales engineer, assisting with proof of concepts, running configuration sessions, troubleshooting issues, etc. So I have a good understanding of how alerts can be set up to ensure best success. So what is alert fatigue? One of my favorite ways of describing this when speaking is to compare it to a story that almost everybody inside there is going to know, which is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. So everyone's familiar with the story that you have the shepherd, he's looking after his flock, and to play a prank on a nearby village, he'll continuously shout that, oh, there's a wolf attacking my sheep. And the villagers drop everything at a moment's notice and run to be the savior. Again, there's no actual issue. It happens again and again and again, and eventually the villagers start to ignore the issue. Exact same sort of principle with alert fatigue, that when something goes wrong, it becomes normalized that I don't need to worry about this, it's a false alarm. It's happened so many times and there's no issues that I can just choose to ignore it. So with alert fatigue, also known as alarm fatigue, the idea is that you get overwhelmed with a large number of alerts, that it desensitizes people that are tasked with actually coming up with a resolution for them. And what this leads to is ignored or else delayed responses, or completely ignored alerts altogether. So there's two main issues here, and number one is to do with the sheer number of alerts that most monitoring solutions would provide. It's almost that they need to prove the benefit by alerting you that anything is going on within your environment. Second is that for quite a number of alerts, it could be possible that there is actual false alerts. So you're being notified that something is going wrong, but it's not actually true. So what's the psychology behind this? So the reason for this is based around normalization or desensitization. So the two concepts roughly mean two similar, or means the same thing. So the more you're exposed to something, the more you're willing to tolerate, normalize it, and in the end, actually ignore it. And it's not just the normalization of alerts in general that's causing the issue here. The repetition of the same alerts time and time again is what causes someone to actually completely ignore it. So if you had a monitoring tool, you're receiving 50 to 100 alerts per day, maybe it's done through email notification. If at the end of the day, the environment continues to work at a somewhat okay level, the idea is that, okay, chances are I can ignore this, I can sit back, I can relax, and nothing is actually happening. You might be sitting back thinking, all right, this would never happen to me. I would never choose to ignore emails or alerts or notifications. But I mean, personally, if I was to open up Gmail on my phone, it's not an empty inbox. I have promotional emails, social emails, update emails, and I'd imagine everybody inside here is the exact same. And why am I not automatically responding to them? It's because I've normalized actually ignoring them. You know, that one company I bought a T-shirt from in the past, like that 5% discount isn't a once-off thing. Chances are in 6 weeks' time, it's going to flood my inbox again. But when we look at normalization and desensitization, so what are the risks associated with this? And there can be actually quite a few risks. So the first is just based around the actual missing or ignored alerts. So if you choose to ignore the alerts, it can have massive consequences to the IT environment that you're looking to monitor. And some of the consequences that can happen as a result will be based around consequences in lost revenue. It could be in relation to brand reputation. It could also then be based around user productivity as well. So the main issue here is that instead of being in a proactive state, instead you're now going to be in a reactive state. Second major risk is going to be based around slow response time. So if you have IT staff that are on call and they're just continuously flooded with alerts non-stop, they're not going to stop what they're doing to fix the issue. If they're spending time with their family, if they're having dinner, if it's the middle of the night and they get a phone call or an email notification, chances are, because there's been such a flood of alerts in the past, they're now again going to choose to normalize it and they're going to ignore it as a result. They might be thinking to themselves, right, is this actually a severity 1 issue, or is this another instance of someone's crying wolf and it's actually going to be a false alarm? What might be most relevant for a lot of people in the audience here is also going to be based around employee burnout. So when you've got constant alerts, you've got sleep interruptions, when you have full inboxes, this is going to be a recipe for employee burnout. Again, what is going to be the result of this? So it could potentially to high turnover, it could lead to lower job satisfaction, and also could lead to lower productivity as well. So as my time as a sales engineer, one kind of overarching theme across all these risks as well is the potential for failed IT projects. So if you're running a proof of concept of a new monitoring tool, or if you're looking to expand a new monitoring tool that you have that's running in the environment, alert noise is one of the key issues that could prevent that from being successful. Again, a lot of monitoring tools will try to flood you with emails, flood you with notifications to prove that they're actually working and they're actually capturing information from the environment. But those alerts aren't going to be based on best practices. It's going to try to show their value. And again, when you have too much noise, this is then what's going to lead to the alert fatigue. But regardless of what monitoring tool you're using, there's a number of best practices you can implement to prevent this from occurring. So number one is going to be that all alerts should be actionable. So if you have a large amount of vague alerts coming through, what that will require is additional effort, time, and attention on your part to actually dive in and figure out, okay, what exactly is happening here? Does this require my immediate attention? Is this someone crying wolf, or is this going to be me chasing my tail to find out exactly what is going wrong? Ideally, within the alert as well, it's not just going to show you that something is going wrong, it should also give insight into what you can do to resolve the issue. Second, notifications should be appropriate to the problem. So for all monitoring tools, not all alerts are going to be created equal. You should ideally have multiple different severity levels, be it informational, warning, critical, etc. So if you have a critical issue on a production database, let's say it goes down, like whoever is on call or whoever can take steps to resolve the issue should be notified regardless of what time or day that this occurs. Absolutely flood everybody, I need an issue immediately. But let's say it's going to be an alert based around a future capacity problem, like a drive is going to fill up in 3 weeks' time. Can I justify calling my DBA at 2 a.m. in the morning to solve this? Chances are, if I do this so many times, they're going to stop taking my call and blacklist my number. What might be a better option here is to simply create a webhook, create a notification on a Slack or a Teams channel, and let someone deal with this when they have time. If you're reaching out to someone through a monitoring tool, there should be a reason that they're being notified, not just anything that can be triggered should be sent. you should ideally have different alert levels, notification groups, and then also trigger actions. There's a good chance that whatever monitoring tool you're using at present will have these available, but by default, chances are you'll just have one set of trigger actions, one contact group, which is then going to be flooded. Definitely worthwhile just spending some time looking into this and see if it could be fine-tuned. Ideally, what we want to do here is to prevent alert storms, and the easiest way to do that would be to create dependency relationships. Again, if you have a network switch that goes down, you've got a server sitting behind it, you've got a database sitting on the server. If you have a monitoring tool, there's a good chance there's going to be dependency relationships configurable, and it's either going to be done automatically, so we'll be able to determine different dependencies, or it might require some configuration on your part. Trust me when I say the steps you could do to actually configure it on your part are definitely worth the issue. So instead of having a flood of something happens, 50 emails are being sent through, you can limit that down to as many as possible, and you will prevent you normalizing and becoming desensitized to those alerts. Last, what you could do is look at setting intelligent thresholds. So if you look at any different alert thresholds, you're going to have informational, warning, and critical, and these then will be based on sometimes best practices, but best practices for a monitoring solution might not be best practice for your environment. Because if you think about it, a monitoring solution is going to be used by small, medium, enterprise organizations, and this isn't a one-size-fits-all. You might have a small org which has a very small number of servers. They're just going to install whatever they can on it and hope for the best. Whereas if you've got an enterprise org, like the CPU threshold, the memory threshold, the disk IOP usage is not going to be the exact same. Ideally, what you should look to do, if it's possible, is create baselines based on the data that's available in your environment that has been polled. I'm not saying that static thresholds are the worst, and they definitely have a benefit. If you don't have the option to baseline on the data you've captured, leverage the static thresholds, but instead of just using the default values, instead what you can do is look and base it off best practices from your environment. Base it off what you want to adhere your monitoring solution to determine. So again, there's a number of ways these can be prevented. This is just a kind of brief talk covering broad strokes about different ways you can use this to analyze the alerting practices, but this isn't a one-time, one-size-fits-all solution. Again, there are a number of dangers inherent with alert fatigue. You don't want to automatically be in a stance where you're willing to ignore it just for an additional few minutes with your friends, to catch up on sleep, to do whatever. If you want to be notified, there should be a reason. And it's important that this is something that's going to be a continuous process. So we always want to be continuously reviewing our processes, our alerts in our systems to make sure we're actually striking the right balance across alerting, and we don't end up in a situation where we're willing to ignore them. So a lot of what we covered is going to be useful for any monitoring solution that you're using. For anyone who might be watching online, I skip past this quite quickly. So my email address is included here. So it's owen.murphy@solowinds.com. I love talking about alerting best practices. I love talking about database monitoring tools. Anyone that's online, feel free to reach out to me. My LinkedIn is also down at the bottom as well. It's just /MurphOwen. I will be available at SolarWinds booth for the rest of today, all of tomorrow, and I'll also be at the costume party as well later today. I'll be the guy that's wandering around in a Viking costume with a glass of wine in his hand. So anyone has any questions around what we've covered, again, I know this is broad strokes. If you want to dive into it a bit more, I'm fully up for doing that. And in case my accent wasn't a dead giveaway, I am Irish. It is St. Patrick's Day, so I appreciate everyone spending time here. I know the lure of the pub is probably a lot more, you'd have a lot more appetite to spend it in the pub rather than listen to me talk about alerts, but really appreciate everyone's time here. Hopefully it was a useful session. At the very least, I hope that maybe some of the options we can use to prevent it gives you another way of thinking about the alerting best practices for your environment, and maybe you can then prevent some of your end users or yourselves getting into this alert fatigue stage. I'll be available here for like the next 5 minutes. I'll also be at the SolarWinds stand, so feel free to come up. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I just want to thank everyone for their time. This is my second SQL Bits. This is the first time I've had a chance to speak, so thank you very much for sitting in on the session.